Hola, everyone. Thank you for those that were able to join us earlier this week or earlier today and get a jump start with our Women of Color in Engineering Collaborative Workforce Retention Institute. If you haven't met, I'm Doctora Lola Rodriguez Vargas, one of your facilitators. And one of the activities that we wanted to share more information on so that you can engage with the content throughout the week is a short model that Dr. Gonzalez shared earlier, which is the braided river model. And the reason why we are talking about this model is because STEM pathways have been described previously, probably since the 70s, if you look at the literature, as having one entry point and multiple exit points as a leaky pipeline. And it was more recently in the early 2020s described as a braided river pathway. And that model of the braided river pathway has origins in indigenous knowledge in Maori. So we want to invite you to engage with this model so that we can increase our understanding of this model as an inclusive, responsive, individualized, and contemporary STEM career development model versus the old leaky pipeline that imagined the career pathway as a one entry and multiple exit points. And this model also allows us the benefit of considering broader personal and cultural context, as well as structural and institutional systems. And I want you to take a look at the figure on your screen is also available in the slides that we share with you so that you can have an opportunity to visualize what is presented on the screen and maybe find something that you had not considered before of the career pathway of STEM professionals, specifically in engineering. Some of the things that you might be able to note in this figure is that it includes multiple training areas. For example, the 2-year institutions, the traditional pathway of the 4-year institutions. Also at the top, you'll see years of experience, so not necessarily like academic training or certifications, alternative types of training, or non-STEM and STEM training. So a lot of the things that feed into that river that takes folks into the field of engineering. So considering this model, we are moving away from a leaky pipeline and we consider multiple entry points. And those multiple entry points, as they are presented by the academics and scholars that established this model, is that it'll have multiple entry points that interact with each other. They're not only feeding, but also engaging with each other. And personally, after reading, and I really enjoy this model, this is why we're presenting it to you. It might have something to do that I have some training in limnology or the study of fresh water. So a river model is really in my wheelhouse. I love that this representation of the information. So I want to invite you to reconsider this model as well. We did that first step of moving away from the leaky pipeline model that has one entry point and multiple exit points. And we're now in the braided river model where we have different entry points and different exit points. For us to consider not only what represents the water, which is the folks that are in this pathway rather than pipeline, but thinking of the environment of the river. I recently went tubing in Arizona, and it's very present in my mind, my experience of being in this environment. And it made me think about a number of things that I want you to consider as part of your organization. So if you think about this for a second and flip a little bit the concept of people being the water, of imagining actual people being in this river or in this pathway, and think about the things that impact our journey in the river if we're in this pathway. One of the things that was the most present for me while I was in that river in Salt River in the Mesa area in Arizona was the temperature of the water, the things that were on the floor below me, the texture of the rocks, the slippery rocks, the sharp rocks, the speed of the current, the strength of the sun, if there were clouds, because I was in the desert and it can become very dry and hot and so many things coming from different places. So if we think about the things that are in the environment and the work that we are doing through the Institute and through our individual organizations, if you could consider the environment other than the fact that it has multiple entry and exit points, I want to invite you to consider the environment beyond the general environment of engineering and choose one portion of this river, braided river that you're seeing, and intentionally be narrow in what you want to think about in your organization. And even if you have multiple locations of your organization, you might even be thinking about a locality and not necessarily the organization at large. And once you think about the locality of your organization, narrow it down and think about a program. Maybe it's a global program that goes across different organizations, but think about one narrow thing that you might have some power or influence. Where is your sphere of influence over this braided river in your engagement with women of color in engineering? If you zoom all the way in and say, I have no control over the temperature or the speed of the water, but I have control over a bank in the shore where people can stop in their journey down the river, and I can provide respite or I can provide resources. What is that one thing that you have your hands on in this pathway? And I know that we have big thinkers in the room. We've already engaged with each other. So I know it's a big ask to only focus on one thing. And that thing should impact directly women of color in engineering themselves. So if you are a professional society, think about your members. If you are an industry professional, think about your engineering employees specifically. So once you consider that, what are the areas of recruitment, retention, and advancement that you want to either influence or even dream big and transform? And continue bringing that thought of how can the increased knowledge of entry points as well as exit points influence your engagement with the best practices that we are going to be talking about, and Dr. Gonzalez already started. So if we consider the entry points, we're seeing traditional training versus non-traditional. For the things that are interacting with the exit points, as one of our participants was sharing previously, what are those entry and exit points engaging in that impact advancement? So hopefully the understanding of this model will widen your ability to diversify the entry points to engineering, specifically in your organization. And you can help us in making sure that our professionals have the tools they need to have successful careers in engineering that are nourishing. And in that way, you can make things that might be invisible visible so that we can strengthen those entry points. An example that I'll share again and again, and we'll talk about next week, is the skill set, the audit that Dr. Gonzalez was talking about, considering what are the skills that are needed for a role versus just assuming what things the person that has a degree will bring, for example. And if we think of this braided pathway, braided river pathway, and we think specifically about recruitment, some of the things that I know that some of you are already doing, and I understand that there's different access to budget and partnerships in different organizations, so these are general. Some of our recruitment tools might be internal candidates, referrals, and there's different ways of doing that, and partnering with our internal employees to be that word of mouth and bringing excellent talent. Internships that are the most, one of the most successful approaches for students to land employment in areas that they really hope to be in. different job boards, career fairs, professional societies, and their career fairs, their job boards, networking, mentoring, field specific events, in-person events like we were also talking earlier today, university partnerships. So those are, for example, some retention, some recruitment tools that we can think and locate down this pathway. Where are we touching individuals and how? And if we think a little bit more about our retention tools, our onboarding, our opportunities for mentoring, the policies that support staff, pay transparency, clear advancement pathways, mentorship, sponsorship, and any other tools that we can encouraged to have inside of our organization, our employee resource group. So if we think of this river and we are considering organization, what is our organization functioning as right now? A waterfall, a reservoir, a lake, and I don't want to pretend that there are no other conditions that will impact the model and our work. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the weather is going to have a huge impact on our journey. But in understanding that our work is not isolated and we have this opportunity in working together across professional societies, industries, and universities, what are the elements that you want to focus on that are under your sphere of influence? And if you can influence a number, not only one of parts of that river, I just want to invite you again to focus on that part of the river. The article and a paper for in February 2025 was published about this pathway that was presented earlier in 2021 is available to you if you want more information, and we hope to continue discussing it with you next week. I hope this was helpful, and you have our emails if you want to ask any specific questions about the model. Again, I really do hope that this was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you next week.